but overall, Xenoblade X left me disappointed. A good game, but not for me. Xenoblade Chronicles X has always been a weird game for me. I finished the original Xenoblade Chronicles about a year before X's release and got sucked into the hype cycle of 2015 as I awaited it along with Metal Gear Solid V, The Phantom Pain. I remember discovering that Hiroyuki Sawano, the man who did Attack on Titan's soundtrack, was composing the music, and seeing discussion on how this game could connect to the original title, a game that I adore and helped me through a lot. I even had a theory video scripted as my first foray into the world of making videos on Xenoblade, but due to limited resources and self-reservations, I never finished it. Eventually, December rolled around, I picked up the game on release, and played for hours. Something about playing a new Xenoblade title was magical, and the world was so massive and detailed that I got sucked into exploring its countless corners. Although I was enjoying it at release, I found myself not entirely thrilled with the cast, viewing the story as pretty safe and mundane, and honestly overwhelmed by the insane amount of variables that make up the battle mechanics. Since Xenoblade Chronicles left such a significant impact on me due to its strong characters and enthralling narrative, I felt a bit underwhelmed by the package presented by Xenoblade X. My playthrough ended right before Chapter 11 due to a mission requirement, and I never had the motivation to pick it back up and grind for that affinity level needed. As I mentioned, I have always recognized Xenoblade X as a game that was good overall, but not what I was looking for, which could have been a result of something I might have missed. I had considered another playthrough to perhaps change my thoughts like my repeat run of Pokemon Black and White did, but it was the insane amount of nice comments from people that understood my mentality that spurred me into another playthrough. So here I am, over 3 years since my original playthrough, and I finally beaten Xenoblade Chronicles X. With a change in perspective when it came to approaching this game as well as looking more in depth into some areas, I can say that while I might not love this game to the extent that I adore Xenoblade 1 and 2, I did genuinely enjoy it a lot, giving me a better opinion of this title. So with this reflection on my time with Xenoblade X, I wanted to take a look at the different areas to see what the second entry effectively succeeds in, and what I think is a bit weaker or could have been fleshed out more. I knew that when I planned to tackle Xenoblade Chronicles X for the first time that there would be a lot on my mind, so this reflection is going to be split into 2 parts. Part 1 covering the story, characters, and premise, and Part 2 covering gameplay, music, and exploration. Just as a disclaimer, this is my opinion after playing through the game, and I am by no means knowledgeable in every area or an expert at the battle system to the same level that people like Enel are. This is just ridiculous. I managed to complete the main story as well as a handful of side objectives and exploration, so these thoughts will be based on my time paired with some research. Just as a heads up, this video will contain bigger gun-sized spoilers for Xenoblade Chronicles X in addition to some mention of Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2. If you do not want to be spoiled, I suggest you finish the game before watching. If you have beaten the game or do not care about spoilers, then welcome. But without further ado, I'd like to do a reverse of my usual order and start with the story and characters. Seeing as how I like to place a big emphasis on story conventions with my videos, I wanted to give a brief overview of Xenoblade X's main narrative. Humanity has been forced to leave Earth due to an assault by an alien force known as the Ganglion. Having boarded ships and departing from their former planet, one vessel known as the White Whale has another encounter with their foes and ends up crash landing on a planet named Mira. Humanity soon opens up New LA and begins its colonization of the foreign world. The player takes control of an avatar, or cross, that primarily works with Elma, a colonel for the organization Blade, as well as Lynn, a talented and young engineer, to track down something called the Lifeform, which is essential to find in time in order to keep humanity alive. Along the way, the Ganglion forces will show up to trouble humankind further, your bodies are revealed to be synthetic shells known as mimeosomes, and the mentality of some people is briefly explored to reveal the darker history of how a part of Earth's population arrived on Mira. There's a really awesome battle sequence involving an assault on the city of New LA in Chapter 8, but the story truly begins to ramp up when a high-ranking Pathfinder named Lau betrays humanity for revenge against those who took the spots of his family on the White Whale and left them to die. This twist is teased pretty heavily in the chapters leading up to it, and it's what I consider the best part of X's story to be. Lau steals a new skull called the Prog Ares and flees with important blade data, which means the party needs to track him down. After defeating him and having a humbling discussion with Lau, they receive the data and Lau is able to see the error of his actions. The final chapter has humanity finally track down the Lifehold and send all Blade operatives to stop the Ganglion forces from destroying it. Within the Lifehold, the group defeats the head of the Ganglion, Luxar, as well as Lau, that has been fused with a chimera to make this nightmare fuel. The party defeats Lau and is hit with revelation after revelation. The Lifehold doesn't truly contain humanity's bodies, but the ability to create new ones. Lau is somehow still alive and being approached by a cloaked figure known as the Black Knight, and Elma is actually a xenoform, which is teased along the journey. Oh yeah, and the Lifehold was destroyed upon arrival, yet humanity still lives somehow. What this line of twist does so well is leaves the player with a copious amount of questions that they will seek answers for once the story is continued. And that's Xenoblade X's main story. Starting with what could be the most contentious point of Xenoblade X might sound strange, but because the game puts a higher emphasis on exploration and gameplay over its written areas, I felt it was the proper way to kick it off. When I originally played X, the simpler story was one of the biggest turnoffs since the presence of a strong narrative in Xenoblade Chronicles composed the identity of what this series was to me. With the full picture, I can say that overall I still feel let down by the whole main story, but there are some great moments in the final missions, and that premise, something I consider to be one of Xenoblade X's greatest strengths, is excellent. I think the concept of arriving on a whole different planet and dealing not only with a persistent physical threat, but the mental health of humanity is quite strong and has a lot of potential. How these individuals might have been affected by the destruction of Earth, the ways that life on a new planet and in a single city might lead to social issues and health problems. That's incredibly fascinating and helps draw me into this world. This concept is primarily displayed through side quests, but the later missions that Lao is a major player in also utilize this theme. There are some scenes and sequences that I think are standouts, such as the defense of New LA from the Ganglion forces, Lao jumping in to kill Luxar, and the ending stinger. Yet there wasn't really any moment in particular that shook me to my core the way that the death of Fiora in Xenoblade 1 or Chapter 10's opening in Xenoblade 2 did. And I think the main reason I didn't have that moment is because of the way Xenoblade Chronicles X is set up and how it develops its characters. Through doing specific heart-to-hearts and some main story missions, you will acquire new characters to use in your party. Each of these characters has some form of quirk to them, whether it's L's butchering of proverbs or HB being a condescending prick. That's also voiced by DC Douglas, which actually made it funny to me because he's awesome and has a history of doing these kinds of characters.
Yes, well, in aggregate, the data clearly indicates that the most qualified candidate is me.
Are you sure about that?
I mainly used Gwyn at first because I gave him a snazzy uniform, but I later switched to Baze Lao since I found his personality to be the most intriguing. He's a man that values Eastern teachings and seems like a pretty chill guy, until he switches to extreme xenophobia due to the Ganglion killing his students. I don't respect some of his actions, but I feel like he had more depth to him, and I appreciate that. The problem I found is characters like HB and Laos are seen in the final mission, but they have no bearing on the main story missions as a whole. Due to this exclusion, I don't exactly feel that much of an attachment to these characters to the extent that I would with a character like Rein, who never seems to be tossed to the wayside and constantly supports Shulk the entirety of the game. As a result, I think a lot of the fun from these characters depends on how far you take it, similarly to a Fire Emblem title. In both games, the player is given a new character that showcases some of their personality quirks and hopes to win you over and use them. If you don't click with them and don't use them, then it doesn't exactly help to strengthen their character since they usually won't play a larger role in the main narrative. However, using that character will open up opportunities for development in side mechanics like completing a character's heart-to-heart line in Xenoblade, or working towards that high-level support via conversations in Fire Emblem. This connection happened to me with the Vaike in Fire Emblem Awakening and Baze Laos in Xenoblade X. Something about their personality struck a chord with me, which prompted me to spend more time with them and delve into their character more subsequently. I didn't get to spend significant time with every character, but I figured I would discuss those I found to be the most captivating. Let's start with a character that could really deserve more time to shine in my opinion. Fandom. He's Blade's commanding officer, but gives off a laid-back, sarcastic feeling that I really like. Fandom has a handful of funny lines, and has some of the most personality from the cast in my opinion. I especially like when he addresses the Ganglion as Brigadier General Jack Fandom, and you damn right better believe I approve of that title. Turns out, disproving will have Elma call him Square Stash as a throwback to Colonel Vanguard from the original Xenoblade, but that's not the only similarity. I always joke about Dixon resembling a Happy Hulk Hogan, but tell me you can't look at this guy and imagine him ripping off his shirt in frustration. The star of the show is Elma, who leads her team in the most dangerous and important missions in the pursuit of the Lifehold and humanity's existence. She's pretty badass and seems to command respect within Blade and even amongst her enemies. For example, her method of keeping Dogon and Reese alive and her speech leave a huge impact on these characters that forces Reese to make bold moves in an attempt to assert her dominance, yet ultimately fails. I think Elma is a character that, like most of the cast, becomes much stronger near the end and when she's opposed by an adversary that can either be a xenoform or the struggles within humankind. I think the confrontation between the party and Lao in the Stolen Prague Ares scale highlights her beliefs wonderfully. She's dead set on accomplishing her mission to save humanity, but she isn't fully ignorant to Lao's anger and situation. There are several pauses before she speaks that show how Elma is taking in and considering Lao's words before responding appropriately. But the end scene highlights the other side of her personality, where she might phrase it in a way that would make you think the mission is her primary objective, but deep down you know that she holds genuine concern for those she cares for. She could easily let Lao stay here to die now that they have what they need, but his apology has her drop some of the defenses and wish to bring him back, albeit worded in a way that follows the Blade books. Overall, her level of respect and authority allows her to command a scene whenever she is present. Finally, there is my favorite character, Lao. To me, Lao feels like the character with the most development from the cast, and that is exemplified by how much attention is given to show off his character with main missions and heart-to-hearts needed to progress the story. Lao signed up for Project Exodus to save his wife and daughter, but they were left behind on Earth to be scorched. This loss fuels his anger for those who paid their way onto the White Whale and pushes him to become a gangling spy. What I love about Lao's character is it gives the player a look into the sacrifices that were made to reach this point, and that the citizens in New LA aren't without emotional scarring. This theme of readjustment is primarily displayed in the side quest, but the narrative does try to explore it in the end with Lao as the catalyst. The best scene that highlights his character is the showdown in Cauldros, where you could feel that he's finally able to let go all of his pent-up emotions. When he says that he has nothing left to lose, you really feel that, and that mentality is exemplified with his deranged taunting of Elma. Lao's dialogue and delivery help to convince the player that even the best of humanity is corruptible and susceptible to their emotions, just as Lao was consumed by revenge. Take a look at his expressions right before he sends off the party. The slight head turn and shifting his eyes downward indicate to me the weight of his guilt crashing upon him, complemented by the confusion of where his life is gone. Nevertheless, his monologue following the group's parting is the pinnacle of this scene. Lao feels trapped and views life almost as a hell since he lost his family, and losing his Mim won't mean the end. All he wants is to be reunited with his family, and he felt the only way that was possible is to break the system he has followed for so long. Two shots that epitomize Lao's torment are the one where he looks into the boundless sky and a bird's eye view as it spirals towards him. The sky shot is particularly interesting because I feel it could be interpreted in two ways. The first is that he looks up at the sky, something he can reach, yet can't remain in or fully grasp, which is depicted by a POV shot. Just as Lao could touch the sky with a scale and eventually run out of fuel, he could destroy his Mim in hopes to see his family, only to be brought back in another. It represents that trapped feeling, and all he could do is look upon his wish from afar. The other interpretation is dependent on nighttime, where the sky is a black void that could symbolize Lao looking into the abyss of death and the unknown, longing for it. There's also the head of the Prague Ares in the shot that almost appears to be looking down upon him and grounding him in reality. He's unable to fully view the sky above because the remnants of humanity are obscuring his view and cementing him in this life. His vision is tainted by the Prague Ares and serves as a reminder that he still has a job to finish. The other shot with the camera looking down on Lao as it swirls away is what I assume is meant to further symbolize that cornered feeling as if he is caught in a vortex. Lao is at the center of a situation he's stuck in, being a life on a foreign planet without his family, and it's slowly slipping away from him just as the camera pulling away would lead you to conclude. I'd say that these shots are an example of why Lao is such a superb character from not just this game, but the whole Xenoblade series. This funneling shot coupled with the sky one beautifully illustrate Lao's character and cement him as the tragic figure that we can sympathize with. But wait, you guys wouldn't be satisfied unless I mention Tatsu, right? I'm gonna be frank. This guy is Juju tier. The best thing this character has done is made me question if this game is truly related to the original Xenoblade when he says Hom Hom in the final sequence. My primary issue is he's designed to be a fun comic relief character, but I don't even think he accomplishes that well. What Tora and Ricky do so much better is provide varied comic relief, but build a relationship with the main cast that feels real and warranted. When Ricky calls Shulk the real hero pawn, that feels genuine and deserved. I don't feel that with Tatsu, and although I like his shades, I don't really care for him. Not to mention the joke of him getting eaten over and over again is really ran into the ground. These are the characters that stuck out to me the most either as a result of proper development or my experience with them. As a side note, I discovered that you could get a hologram in the barracks called the Superior Form, and well...
Will I ever stop excelling?
Just as I said, Xenoblade X's style of handling characters is different and places the responsibility of getting that death in your hands. This leads me to the biggest notion that could be used to describe Xenoblade Chronicles X: customization. I asked on Twitter what people loved about Xenoblade Chronicles X, and the large theme I noticed was the mention of side quests and tailoring the experience to what you'd like. Xenoblade Chronicles X at its core is a game with a pretty straightforward story and combat that could be used decently enough to get through what's necessary. If somebody wishes to play through the game and accomplish what is deemed as the main path, they might find themselves underwhelmed like I was. However, what Xenoblade X aims for is to offer such a deep level of freedom that really envelops every aspect of this game. You can finish the main story and have a pretty plain experience, or you can complete a number of heart-to-hearts or side quests that will provide further context concerning the state of Mira, the citizens of New LA, and your secondary party members. The numbered Xenoblade games offer this with their respective worlds, however Xenoblade X seems to place a higher emphasis on it. With customization being the name of the game, I can understand when somebody says they love or dislike Xenoblade X. I fit the level of freedom and possibilities is refreshing and exactly what some people are looking for. That's not everyone, and especially those that jumped into this game looking for a story that would blow their minds, or can get lost in those possibilities. Although, the main reason my appreciation for X has grown is due to the gameplay, and that is something that is best saved for later. Hey everyone, welcome to the end of part 1 of my Xenoblade Chronicles X analysis and review. I knew going into this that this video was going to be a juggernaut, and a lot of people mentioned on my previous video that they kind of liked the shorter style, so I decided I kind of wanted to break this up into 2 distinct parts. That way it's not like 40 minutes thrown at you at once, and it's a bit more digestible this way. If you did enjoy the video, I would ask that you like and subscribe, as it really does help out the channel. It also really helps me know what kind of content that you guys are looking for and what kind of style. I want to keep this short since, of course we still have part 2, and part 2 will actually be releasing next Sunday. I decided I just wanted to have these be a week apart, and then as for the video that's going to follow this, it's going to be following the usual format and just be 3 weeks after part 2 of this Xenoblade Chronicles X collection of sorts. We just hit 750 subs on the channel fairly recently, which is absolutely incredible. Thank you guys so much for that. It's truly humbling just to see how far we've come in a short time, and just seeing this community grow is really awesome to me, so thank you guys so much for that. But that's really all I have to say for now, so look forward to part 2 coming out next Sunday, and I will see you guys later. Until next time.